Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I have had this whatever going on for a couple weeks here, so my voice is a little compromised. I'm going to try to sing a little bit, so sing loud from the pews. And I'm here tonight with Rabbi Adam Schelt.
Shabbat Shalom.
And he'll be welcoming you, as well as Bruce will be welcoming you. And Sean was just welcoming you he just happened as a treat just to spoil us. He brought in his harp tonight, which is just beautiful, and we will get to hear it again right after the silent meditation. Maybe we'll have a little bit of harp music too. So welcome and Chag Sameach, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm your substitute teacher for the day, Rabbi Adam Schelt. I think you all, I see a lot of familiar faces in front of me, which is an absolute joy. The mic can't quite hear me. Is this helpful? Okie doke. Okay. This is better? Delightful. My lower back is grateful I'm not doing this for the entire night. Well, Shabbat Shalom. I'm still your substitute teacher. It's wonderful and absolutely such a treat to be with you this evening. I'm so glad that you all have welcomed me into your midst. It's wonderful. And I believe we have some more greetings from Bruce. I hope I don't break your service. If I do, I brought some duct tape and super glue. It's in my car. I will do my best to repair it.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome, Rabbi Adam. It's good to have you back. And welcome to all of you on this really beautiful spring day. I said to Joanne when I walked in, we should be outside. We should be out under the tent. There is no tent. It doesn't matter, but we should be outside. It's a perfect night for it. But there will be plenty of them coming up in the not-too-distant future. In the meantime, we have a special service this evening. Not only do we have a special guest rabbi, we have a special guest speaker, and we continue our Earth Month festivities and talks, and we get to learn more this evening. So always a good thing. And we have lots of announcements to look forward to at the end of the service, because we have lots of stuff coming up. So I'll shut up now. And, the harp is here. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom.
Well, let's all go to page, let's see if it's in our leaflet tonight. And it is not, but that's okay, we know it. We are going to sing Let My People Go. And actually, it says it's on page 665.
It is indeed.
So let's see if that is true. And that'll be difficult for me because I'm not even finding it is. So I do not have a Mishkan Tefillah. Where could it have gone? Oh, I have it. Oh, this is what, you don't want to go inside here. You never come back out. You get lost. Hey, 655, let's see what some of the, 665, let's see. Oh, okay, we got a couple verses in there. All right, Sean. When Israel was in Egypt land,
My people go.
oppressed so hard they could not stand.
Let my people go.
saith the Lord, for Moses said,
Let my people go.
if not, I'll smite your firstborn dead.
Let my people go.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go. No more shall they in bondage toil.
My people go.
Let them come out with Egypt's spoil.
Let my people go.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go.
Friends, it's never truly Shabbat until we light candles. Would anyone, since I'm not entirely well versed with each and every one of you this evening, would anyone like to light candles? Any brave volunteers to pop up and light for us? To welcome in Shabbat? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller?
Oh, Irv, yeah. He said no. Oh, thank
Beautiful.
you. Oh, Sean and Mark, wonderful.
Perfect. Friends, a blessing for candle lighting is found, I believe, on page 120.
I'll let you light because I can't.
And we'll all sing it with you, so don't worry about that.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav, yitzivanu lehadlik ner, lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you both so much.
And
And,
page 123.
okay.
Baruch
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei beriach hafei. Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahavu ratzon v'hilanu zikaron le'maseh Bereshit ki hu yom tehillah le'mikra'ei kodesh zeker tziyat Mitzrayim kivanu ata v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha v'ahavu ratzon hinkaltanu. Baruch atah
guys, that was fabulous.
Oh, I had surgery, so this is up to you now.
That's it. I'm handing my kippah over to Sean. You're taking over.
No, she has.
I don't understand how someone can attend 2 services and know how to sing the Kiddush. He's very musical, as well as very good in languages, I'm guessing, too.
Friends, we continue welcoming Shabbat truly into our midst with Lecha Dodi on page 138. Looks like we're singing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'sachor b'tiporecha, Ishbi anu el hamuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, Shemo tiferet v'lila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Ikrot Shabbat lichuvenecha, Ki mikor ha'veracha, Rosh minkedem esucha, Sof ma'aseh b'tzavat tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Itori, kiva orech, kumi ori, uri, shidaberi, kavod Adonai, alayit nikra. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Oy v'shalom ater bala, Gamel simcha ufetzola, Toch emunei asigula. Oy kala, wave hello to anybody. You can catch their eye. Eli Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi. Just say Shabbat Shalom. Eli Shabbat. One more time, everyone. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Eli Shabbat nekabela.
Friends, we turn to page 146. And I was nice enough to wait until most of you sat down to ask you to rise for the Baruch Hu. Everyone, today is actually National Exercise Day. And that's not even a joke, it really is. And now you can say that you've celebrated it appropriately. You're welcome. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Friends, let's join together on page 152 for the Shema. I'm sorry, I just lied. See, I told you I might break your service. Page 149, there's a lovely little piece on there that I think dialogues beautifully with Earth Day. Right at the top of page 149, praise to you. Let's read that together. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. We join for the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Do you guys usually sit down at this point? Beautiful, have a seat. Some congregations don't, but I'd ask. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'kol avavcha v'kol nafshecha kol meodecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi Mitzavecha hayom alevavecha Vashinantam levanecha Vadibarta baham Beshivtecha bevetecha Uvlektecha vaderech Uvshokbecha uvkumecha Ushartam lehod al yadecha Ve'hayu letotafot beinenecha Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha Uvisharecha Leman tizkeru V'asitem kotai V'yem doshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher Hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, Lihiot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem me'emet. Our service progresses from themes of preparation as we move into prayer and into the beautiful evening that is Shabbat, and moves us toward redemption. Michamocha is found on page 158.
We will be singing it to, excuse me, to the tune of Adir Hu, God of Might, in the theme of Passover. Moshe uMiriam, Ze'iri, Anu ve'amaru, Adonai Yimha le'olam. Amen.
Friends, let's turn the page and read Hashki Venu together in English at the bottom of the page. Such a lovely little prayer. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, for your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and our coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people, Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yerushalayim. You may find your silent tefillah. I invite you to rise if you're so comfortable. Beginning on page 164 and continues through 170.
turn to the handout in your leaflets. And thank you, Sean. Sean just kind of surprised us tonight and brought his harp. Just kind of like that. Well, I've done this year to year. I do this every year, without question. And I hope you guys know it a little bit by now and can sing along with me. Egypt's to leave. It's not about rebuilding time. I'll just let my people go. That's history, that's theater. That's not always life. It's about what you believe. And we all have our own Egypts to leave. Don't turn away the stranger, for now you know the stranger's heart. From history, from theater, sometimes that's life. It comes down to what you believe. And we all have our own Egypts to leave. We look back in order to look forward. We see that we are among redemptions and acts of freedom and births of possibility. We might not have seen, but we all have our own Egypts to leave. Yeah, yeah. Why is it this way? Why on this night? Why is it that way? Why not upright? 'Cause of what God did to me. And to show him we believe. And we all have our own Egypts to leave. We look back in order to look forward. We see that we are among redemptions and acts of freedoms and births of possibility. We might not have seen. We all have our own Egypts to leave. Why is it this way? Why on this night? Why not that way? Why not upright? We look back in order to look forward. We see that we are among redemptions, acts of freedom and births of possibility. We might not have seen. We all have our own Egypts to leave. Yeah, yeah. Egypt's to leave. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Sean.
Friends, we turn our hearts and minds toward thoughts of healing, health, and well-being. On this Shabbat, looks like we have a good number of folks who are in need of exactly that kind of loving kindness and goodwill. Please, by all means, correct me if I mispronounce a name, as I'm sure that I will. We lift up the names of Gail Ackerholt, Neil Agnetta, Paula Ames, Hope Bongiorno, Samuel Block, Sandy Canty, Sheldon Cohen, Evan Dennis, Chris Donner, Tina Ferrato, Lauren Goldhirsch, Mira Grosser, Adrian Graber, Ernie and Carolyn Gross, Nancy Hersbrunn, Pam Huber, Jonah Alexander Hyman, Kenny Jackson, Alex Katz, Granger Hugh Kelly, Mary Len Kerman, Tony Rinsberg, and Maddie Rinsberg. Mark, Mark Nightinger, Renata Lefcourt, Gail Lewis, Lynn Longo, Ellen McClade, Rick Mahler, Kansas Mai, Pamela Nigut, Bill Ostroff, Robert Posas, Jeff Pratt, Tamara Ratino, Stephen Rice, Tony Romano, Sarah Korn Rothschild, Brandon Ryan, Danette Sang, Ernie Seputelli, Remy Schoenwetter, Eric Smith, Andrew Sutherland, Eleanor Tepper, Tracy Thiel, Enjo Tufts, Jen Ursaner, Marla Vagarozzi, Judy Von Horn, Celeste Zachritz, Gail Zaretsky, Carla Batchana, Yosef Ben Sissel, Hannah Ezra Ben Shul, Eileen Silas, Brina Chia Bat Zipporah, Risha Bat Zipporah. To those names, I invite you to add anyone else you may be holding in your heart that we need to lift up for healing.
Vega and Jess McKisser.
Jimmy Goldstein, Pauline Rogers, Ruth Spivak, Anna Mary Levesque, Lugo G. Lewis, Lisa Krishna.
Misha Berach may be found on page 371.
With refuah
So friends, I would like, saying friends, acquaintances, and some friends, I don't know all of you, although I would love to. I believe one of you, Joe, is going to come up and introduce this evening's guest speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. As you may have heard, I had a bit of a misstep last week at the end of the service. But I want to set the record straight. It wasn't a fall. I was just demonstrating to Bruce how to do a judo roll technique to break a fall. But seriously, thank you to those who helped me afterwards, and thank you to all of you who have sent your best wishes. And I am healing. And today is the first event out of the house, so I'm not wearing my boot that I had on last week. So I'm getting there. So tonight we're continuing our lecture series on biodiversity. Last week we heard from Dr. Shannon Seneca, who provided us a glimpse of Native American philosophy and local history, and how these two traditions combine to create a doctrine to care for the earth. For the Native Americans, their science concerning the earth and its care is closely integrated with their spiritual beliefs, but also draws from practical experience. Their beliefs emphasize caring for each other and all those around us. Even if deer are hunted for food, they are still to be respected and recognized as inhabitants of this world and protected when they're not hunted. We may be at the top of the food chain, but that only increases our responsibility to all the rest of Earth's ecosystem. Maybe it's something we, in the modern world, need to remind ourselves about. Tonight, we'll start learning about some of the modern scientific views on biodiversity. We begin with the biology of aquatic life and the health of our lakes and rivers. It's an appropriate starting point since water is the giver of life and it spawned the double helix and all life on Earth. Some scientists have wondered whether in a couple of decades water may become today's equivalent of oil, a rare precious commodity critical to the survival of life and civilization. Because of the predicted droughts and the losses and alterations of water sources caused by climate change, one can envision vast pipelines transporting water just as we do oil today. Ecological systems are complex and difficult to fully understand. That only means we need to continue and expand research in order to gain a better understanding. Our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Corey Krabenhoff, a UB assistant professor in biology who is doing just that. Her primary research interests center around the response of freshwater communities to environmental stressors, including invasive species, climate change, water quality, and water availability. She has worked in the Great Lakes area for 10 years and has active research on lake trout reproduction. Are there any anglers here who might be interested? And also on the round goby invasion and native mussel conservation. Outside of her research, she spends most of her time with a very spoiled yellow lab, Lucy. But she also joined a local bowling league last year with a team affectionately known as Dead Fish. I don't know about that. I think maybe something like Fish Mavens might be more appropriate. Anyway, Dr. Corey Krabenhoff.
on. Can you hear me okay? All right, bear with me 1 second while I turn on our projector. Speaking of the aforementioned yellow lab. Well, I'll start by thanking you so much for having me here tonight. I almost forgot I was supposed to speak. I was enjoying your services so much. I really appreciate all of the mentions in the passages so far. So water as well has been very appropriate. So I don't know who's in charge in choosing these things, but my compliments. Thank you so much for the introduction from Joe and the invitation to be here. I appreciate everyone's attendance, and those of you joining from at home or wherever you are online, appreciate your interest in my research area. It's always nice when someone else cares about the things that we spend our lives working on. I joined the faculty at UB about 2.5 years ago now, and I think of myself as an aquatic ecologist, which means that the vast majority of the organisms that I work on spend their entire lives underwater. And we interact with that water every day. There's a number of reasons why humans get benefits from those freshwater ecosystems that I spend my life thinking about. But I also like to think about those underdogs, those things underneath the surface that spend the majority of their lives in that environment. I've got some examples up here that you can see as well. So my path through all the training that I undertook for my education landed me here in Buffalo. I'm not from Buffalo originally, but the Great Lakes is a really wonderful place to be working on this particular topic. Many of you probably know that we have the Laurentian Great Lakes are right here in our backyard. This is a satellite image that I'm showing here on the screen for those of you who can see it. This is the greatest freshwater resource that exists on the planet. 20% of the world's freshwater is contained in the Great Lakes, and it's right here in our backyard. So it's very fun for me. It's basically a playground. All of the lakes and rivers is where I spend my time, and I spend my time thinking about the organisms that call them home. But we also get something out of these resources as people, of course. 40 million people get their drinking water from the Great Lakes, including everyone in Buffalo. Our drinking water comes from Lake Erie. But it's not just what people derive from the Great Lakes that I'm concerned about. It's mostly what else is going on in those ecosystems. For example, Joe mentioned anglers and fishing. There are about 139 native fish species in the Great Lakes. And while we've done a great job since the very first Earth Day in 1970 of helping to clean those up, we have much more work to do. There are about 61 fish species that are native to the Great Lakes that are in some sort of trouble, that are threatened or endangered. And a lot of the work that I do and that my lab works on is focused on those specific species. So I appreciate the invitation to come here today to talk about this, something that's relevant to us all right here in our backyard in the Great Lakes, and especially in celebration of Earth Day. It's quite an honor to be here talking with you in honor of Earth Day, which is very relevant to aquatic science specifically. The very first Earth Day in 1970 sort of came on the heels of a bunch of environmental destruction that sort of peaked in the 1960s. Some of you may even remember very famously in 1968, the Buffalo River caught fire. I don't know if you know much about rivers, but they're not supposed to be able to burn. That's a bad sign. And so there was an environmental movement in the 1970s that culminated in a few things that are very important to aquatic ecologists like myself and to users of all of that water, including the Clean Water Act, which came in 1972, and the Endangered Species Act in 1973, both of which are very core pieces of legislation that regulate how we interact with our freshwater resources today. So before I get into some examples of the organisms that are sharing our backyards with us, I'd like for everybody to take a moment, and feel free to join in at home, to think of a fish. Bring it up in your mind's eye. Most of you probably are thinking something like this. The organism behind me is a lake trout, one of the ones that Joe mentioned that I work on in my lab. It's a very classic looking fish. It's important for anglers, it's important for recreation, it's important for commerce. Salmonids, it comes from the family Salmonidae, which has a number of species that exist all over the world. It's sort of the poster child for a fish. Many of you may have also been thinking about the fish on your plate, particularly this time of year, I'm told, or what you're going home to dinner to tonight. That's also okay. Salmonids make up a number of the food fish that are important for people around the world as well. So it's a common one that we think of, but not all of the species of those 139 that live in our backyard are quite as charismatic or notable or understood as things like our lake trout friend or the other salmonids in that family. I don't have time to go over all 139, but I'm going to give you a couple examples that we're really interested in here in the Great Lakes from a conservation perspective. Some of them look a lot like salmonids, some of them not so much. Some of them are hanging out at the very deepest depths of the Great Lakes themselves, which are very, very deep. Some of them are hanging out in the rivers and streams and don't even get very big. They're just a few inches in length. I tend to gravitate towards those underdogs that don't get as much attention, and oftentimes they're some of the most species of concern in terms of our conservation of these ecosystems. So the first one I'm going to give you an example of maybe lands on the charismatic side. The images I'm showing behind me are of a lake sturgeon. You might have heard of sturgeon because they're a common species that's used for caviar, so another sort of food fish. They're an interesting one from a conservation perspective, though, because they're very, very long-lived. They can live up to over 150 years in some cases. Ooh, I like the wow at the end. It's always nice when people react. They historically get very, very long. We'll catch them 8, 10, 12 feet long these days. They can get up to 300 pounds. So they're basically dinosaurs that are swimming around in the waters right here in our own backyard. And because of their long-lived nature, it takes them a really long time to get to the point where they can reproduce and sustain that population over a long period of time. They can, depending on the individual, they might need to be 15 to 30 years old before they can reproduce and make more sturgeon to keep that population going. It gives them a long amount of time that they're exposed to the environment and everything going on in the world that could disrupt that cycle and their populations. And so they're one that's particularly of concern. They have not yet been put on the endangered species list, largely due to very coordinated and focused efforts from folks like the United States Fish and Wildlife Service and others who are very concerned about monitoring these populations and making sure they're doing okay. One of the reasons why they were in trouble to start with is from overharvesting. So folks used to take lake sturgeon out of the environment, ironically because they were seen as a nuisance. So the Great Lakes has a very long history of commercial and recreational fishing. And lake sturgeon, being that they're these very, very large organisms, would get tangled up in the fishing nets and basically ruin the harvest for whatever the fishing operation was. And so they were viewed as a nuisance species, and they were pulled out by the tens and thousands of pounds of fish until we reached a point where we no longer had a sustainable population. Sometimes those fish were used for a source of fuel because they're a very oily fish, so it's not as though they all went to waste, but we were harvesting at an unsustainable rate, particularly for this very large-bodied and long-lived fish. So they're a particularly interesting one. They, have a face only a mother could love with their little whiskers. I think they're quite cute. But they're one of the ones that are very charismatic and it's sort of easy to get folks to be interested in. There are a few on display at the Aquarium of Niagara if you're interested. Not quite 10 feet long, but you can go see what they look like in real life. One of the other ones I wanted to point out is maybe a little less charismatic. They don't get quite so big. They are a little bit longer lived. They can live to be about 20 years. This is the long-nosed sucker. If some of you are anglers, you might be familiar with suckers to some capacity. I know there's a decent whitefish sucker fishing area down just below Niagara Falls in the Whirlpool area. But long-nosed sucker is an interesting one because it's of concern for conservation, folks interested in conservation, due to an entirely different mechanism. It's not so much over-harvest, because people don't tend to target them for fishing as often, but their habitat has been degraded. So they are an interesting species because they move between lakes and rivers and streams. They move back and forth between those habitats, and they need very clear, cool water. And so as we've moved into the Great Lakes and developed our human populations on the surface of the land, a lot of the activities that we engage in impact what's going on in our streams and rivers. So, for example, I was speaking with someone before the service about forests. If we go and take down forests, cut down trees in order to build housing, for example, that's a very good use of our time and energy, right? Housing people is a very important thing. But if we do that, then all of the activity where we've removed the forest that's anchoring that soil in place and we've engaged in construction, it loosens a lot of the soil that ends up washing into our streams and rivers. And so all of that sediment going into this nice, cool, clear stream makes it murky, it makes it brown. There's a lot of sediment suspended in that water, and that's really bad for organisms like our long-nosed sucker. Other things like pollution from various things running off into our streams are also a big concern here for long-nosed sucker. So this is one that's a species of greatest conservation need in the state of New York, and one that folks are keeping a close eye on as we move through, as we develop around the Great Lakes, particularly what's going on in the surface of the land, because that's also impacting what's going on underneath the surface of our waters. Now, folks like myself, we often get very excited about individual species like this, but we've moved away from approaching conservation in a species-specific manner. We think much more about whole ecosystems or networks of species rather than focusing on an individual species by itself. And part of the reason we do that is because there's a lot of interactions between that organism and the environment around it, as well as the other organisms in that ecosystem. And so we tend to take a more holistic approach to how we engage in conservation work these days. And so while it might be easy for us to think about the lake trout or the muskie or all of those fish that anglers are particularly excited about or that serve as an important food fish for folks around the Great Lakes, there are many, many others that are just as important. And the interactions of those are really what's keeping that ecosystem in the good state that it's in. Now, Joe mentioned food chains, for example. That's a classic example of the way that all of these different organisms are connected, where the big fish eats the small fish, which eats the insects, which is eating the algae. And if you think about all of those connections, if we lose one of those species, if the habitat for that long-nosed sucker degrades, or if we overharvest the lake sturgeon, I like to think of it as sort of taking a card out of a house of cards, where if you take out one of those links, things tend to collapse. And so this is why we think about these things much more in terms of their species interactions rather than single species alone by themselves. And so I just wanted to give you one more example because I think that fish are maybe a more familiar example of the kinds of aquatic organisms that we care about. But I wanted to highlight one that's maybe a little bit less familiar. It's also one of the ones that's very classic in terms of thinking about species interactions. What may look like some plain rocks to those of you here who can see the photos behind me, these are actually native mussels. I also spoke with someone earlier about zebra mussels. These are the invasive ones that you've heard about in the news. They colonize our waterways and they cement themselves to hard surfaces. They damage infrastructure. They're changing the water quality. Well, these are their native counterparts that haven't gotten nearly as much attention. And it turns out that our native mussels are in a bit of trouble, just as the same as some of our fish species. In the Niagara River region, we historically had up to 32 species of native mussels. So these are just like the, clams that you would see in the aquarium or at a supermarket, but these are the freshwater counterparts to those of you who are more familiar with the marine ones. They're native to this region, they belong here, but compared to the 32 species we used to have in the Niagara River alone, we only now have 13 species. And there's been a very drastic decline, which is related to water quality and habitat decline in the area over the last 100 years or so. But one of the reasons why I study these, coming from a background in fish biology, is because they have a very unique life history strategy. What we're looking at here in this photo is a native mussel to this region. It's got two shells, like you imagine a clam or a mussel having. And what's being sort of exuded out of that shell is a piece of its soft tissue that's meant to mimic a fish. We call it a lure, for those of you who are anglers. That should be a familiar term. It's a lure because it's designed specifically to attract fish to come and investigate. The reason being that inside that mussel, it's a female mussel, it has all of its little baby mussels inside her shell. She attracts the fish, and when the fish gets close enough, she exudes all of those little baby mussels, and they parasitize that fish for a period of a couple weeks. They basically latch on to its gill tissues, and that's where they get all of their sustenance over the course of a couple weeks. This is one of the craziest biology stories I know, right? The photo I'm showing here is a very close-up picture under microscope of gills of a fish, and all the little dots that you're seeing are tiny baby mussels. They're very much not much to them. They're about the size of a grain of sand. So for a period of a few weeks, depending on the species, they parasitize that fish. They are getting all of their energy from the fish itself. They hitch a ride on that fish to disperse to a new area, and then once they're developed enough, they drop off, and then they make a new home as adult mussels, well, juvenile mussels that will grow into adult mussels. As far as we know, this does not harm the fish. That's something still up for debate that we're working on in my lab. But it's a really nice example of how these interactions between species are critically important for keeping our ecosystems intact. Here's a picture of some of the diversity of the native mussels that we have here in the Western New York region. My lab sampled these just last summer. A lot of them have really interesting stripes and coloration. This one on the bottom left is called a pink heel splitter. The other thing about native mussels is that they have really excellent names. You can see about how big they are. The measuring stick there in the top of the photo is about 8 inches long. Some of these will get about the size of your hand, maybe a little bit bigger. So it's a really sort of underappreciated part of the biodiversity of our Great Lakes, and one that you probably wouldn't know was there. If you're tubing down the river, if you're going hiking along the shores, if you're out on a boat, you'd likely never see these, and they do literally look like rocks when you're walking around. So it's a very much underappreciated part of the biodiversity, but certainly a critically important one. Mussels, as you might have be familiar with respect to zebra mussels and quagga mussels that have invaded the Great Lakes, they are filter feeders. But these are natural ones that exist in our ecosystems without having to be put here by people. And because they're filter feeders, we think of them as the kidneys of our rivers. They're filtering out E. coli and various bacteria. They can take contaminants out of the water and make that water cleaner for the rest of the organisms when they're there, but only if they're there and in the appropriate abundance. So this is one that we've been excited to work on in my lab over the last few years, and we're currently working on a conservation project to give our native mussels a boost. So in celebrating Earth Day, I suppose I wanted to come and share with you some of these stories about our underappreciated aquatic organisms that I spend lots of my time thinking about, because it's very easy to think about Earth Day and remember the forests and remember the grasslands and the condors and the birds and all of these very flashy organisms that we might have a better time interacting with above ground. But there are plenty of things existing in these ecosystems just under the surface if you know where to look. So I thought this was a wonderful opportunity to come and talk about this in celebration of Earth Day, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you. I will be around after the service if anybody would like to have questions, but as a college professor, I do tend to go on, so I'm sure that your rabbi would like his microphone back. But I thank you so much for listening, and I'd be happy to chat with you all later. And I want to thank Joe again for the invitation to present, and you all for your attendance and your tuning in online. It's been an absolute pleasure to attend your service.
I feel very guilty about all the smoked sturgeon I used to eat as a child. That was a favorite.
Friends, we continue with our service. On page 586 with Elenu, I invite us all to rise if we're able. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, atetu l'anu sereshit, shalom haratzot, velo samanu, b'shachot adama, shalom sam helkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kekol ha'olam. Anachnu orim, umishata So as we transition in our minds to a place of mixed with support and grief, we turn our minds to those who are no longer with us. But on this Shabbat in particular, our greater Jewish community is truly grieving for the loss of Hannah Lucille St. Cyr, a sweet, sweet little girl who passed in a car accident in Florida. I believe they are members of TBT, Temple Beth Tzedek, but it's a small community, so many of us are affected. So, Cantor,
The Wisbaums are the grandparents,
yeah,
and they're members. Bruce.
yeah. It's a horrible, tragic loss. No loss is easy, but this one stings. So if there is support in your heart to offer to one another, especially any members of the grieving family, I encourage you to do so. We also mark this Shabbat as a period of Shiv'ah, as we remember for Arlene Gutenberg, Dr. Elias Kaufman, Marilyn Elkin Leeds, cousin of Jay Mesnikoff, Suzanne Lefcourt, Michelle Polonsky, and Eva Rubenstein. Again, friends, if I mispronounce anyone, please correct me. We also honor those yahrzeits for this Shabbat for Sally Anderson, Sam Arnovitz, Seal Balber, Helen Bloom, Harvey Chazen, Daniel Morris Cohen, Norbert J. Doan Sr., Isidore Falkowitz, Louis Fink, Jean Frey, Daniel Friedfertig, Maurice Gafter, Alexandra Gerstel, Esther Karch, Saul Kaufman, Mary Kerman, Max Kopstick, Lena R. Corin, Morton Korn, Louis Kranitz, Henry Lansing, Joseph Malnikoff, Yetta Maldekern, Abraham Nosenchuk, Gertrude Uli, Sarah Orlick, Victor Priasnik, Dorothy Rukin, Samuel Rubin, Michael Ribicki, Sam Max Savasty, Savatsky, Belvira Shanin, David Schreiber, Milton A. Silverman, Harry Starr, Rose Stolberg, Esther Turk, Benjamin Ungerlater, Fred Vogel, Carol Wohl, Dora Wolpen, Deborah A. Zimmerman. To those names, I invite you to add anyone you may be holding in your heart in this time of remembrance. If it is your custom, I invite you to rise for Kaddish at Home, Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach lutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayachon uvyomechon uv'chayei dekol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv imru, Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach l'olam u'lamei almayah, Yarach v'ishtabach v'pa'ar v'itramam v'itnaseh, v'itadar v'itale v'talal shemei dekudesha brichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Osei shalom v'imromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Zikronam livracha, We pray that their memories may ever be a blessing in our lives. And you may be seated. And I believe we have some announcements.
Two.
I believe we have a lot of announcements.
Yes, you may.
We have 2 pages. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you to fill-in Rabbi Adam, Cantor Frank, and Sean. And when I say we are the cool shul, I think of services like tonight. There's not another temple in America that had a service like this evening. We had an interesting speaker. We had meaningful prayers. We had meaningful music. We had a harp. I mean, who could ask for more? So thank you to all of you guys for being part of that. And thank you to Dr. Corey Grabenhoff from the University of Buffalo for a really interesting talk. We spent a lot of time out there on those waters. And you taught us stuff that we didn't know. Of course, you didn't talk about the fish that we all care about, the gefilte fish. But that's okay. And thank you to Joe Morris for organizing our Earth Month speaker series. We will continue next Friday night with another speaker, and then a week from Sunday, we have our Earth Day event. That is Sunday, April 27th. It's from 2 to 4:30 p.m. We have activities. We have area organizations that are joining us. It should be a really interesting time. Still looking for volunteers, are you?
Yeah, we'll grab people as they show up.
Okay, if you'd like to help out in any way, talk to Joe after the service. Thank you to our service greeters this evening, Diane Gordon and Keith Berzon. Welcome back to our temple president, Todd Sugarman, back from Florida. I don't have to say hi, Todd, like this anymore. I can say hi, Todd, like this. Well, Frank scares them away. That's the problem. Frank sits over there, and you see the gap here? I know. Anyway, tomorrow morning we have Torah study at 9. That's at Temple Beth Tzedek, also via their Zoom. The Shabbat morning service and Kiddush luncheon is at 10:45. That is also at Temple Beth Tzedek.
No,
It's here. It's here. See, it's okay. Now, what about the luncheon?
Tomorrow's service is at 10:30 here.
And that's the Yizkor service. Okay, so forget what I just said. Let me start over. I broke the announcements. Tomorrow morning, there is no service at Temple Beth Tzedek. We don't care about that. There is a Yizkor service here, the Passover Yizkor service, 10:30, followed by luncheon. Excellent. Which will be a Pesadiki luncheon, I might add. No bread. There is no community religious school this week due to the Passover holiday. It will resume on Sunday, April 27th, just in time for our Earth Day activity. We want to thank everyone who attended our second night Seder this week. It was a big success. It was a wonderful evening. How many people? I heard like 100 and something. 120-ish? Excellent. More than 120 people taking part. It's always nice when we can get together like that. It's good to have that again. Thank you to Ganilla Kister for our Buffalo Corner reading series last night. It is always thought-provoking. It was a murder evening, and we have a murder evening coming up later this month, which I will tell you about in a moment. Ballroom dancing class will return in May, so stay tuned for that. The women of Shir Shalom are going to be very, very busy. They were busy preparing the Seder plates for the second night Seder. Thank you for doing that. But they're going to be very busy. The women of Shir Shalom and the Tikkun Olam Committee will be meeting on April 22nd, which is the actual Earth Day, at 6:30 p.m. to begin 2 really interesting projects to reuse fabrics and beautify our world. They're going to be making a wall-hanging quilt from kippot. So a yarmulke quilt. That's going to be, and it'll hang somewhere in the temple. We don't know where, but when they're done, it'll really be spectacular. And then they're making the reusable Thanksgiving bags for the food drive. Julia is here. If you can help out in any way, talk to her. You don't have to know how to sew. You just know you can rip. You have rippers, right?
There are jobs you can iron.
You can iron.
You can measure.
You can measure. You can rip. Okay, all sorts of stuff. Speaking of Tikkun Olam, The collection this month is for the Rhinestone Woods Summer Camp. We are collecting tall white crew socks for children ages 5 to 13 and washable markers. Talk to Janine about that afterward if you'd like to know more. Sisterhood, speaking of which, the Sisterhood Shabbat, the Women of Shir Shalom Shabbat, is Friday, May 16th. There are still parts available in English and Hebrew. Jill is here this evening if you would like to talk to her about that. Shabbatas will be back a week from Tuesday. That will be Tuesday, April 29th. We've adjusted our times a little bit. It's now from 4 to 6:30. And of course, you can save money and guarantee getting a dinner if you pre-order on our website. Voting for the World Zionist Congress continues. It goes until May 4th, I believe. We have flyers in the lobby. We've been sending out emails. Karen Wiseman is here. If you'd like to know more about that, please talk to her. It's really, really important to do, and we have until May 4th to do that. I mentioned Murder Mystery. We have our Murder Mystery Dinner Theater on Saturday, April 26th. That's a week from tomorrow. It is performed by Western New York Improv. There will be a buffet dinner. There'll be wine. There'll be beer. There'll be a dessert. Reservations are still being accepted. It's $42 a person. There are some forms outside if you would like to be there. It sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. If you need anything at all, please feel free to reach out to Rabbi Alex, Cantor Frank, Todd, who is back from Florida. If you need your lawn cut, Todd is here. He'll take you. No, he'll shovel your driveway. Nope, you won't do that either? What are you going to do? Nothing. Then why are you on the list that if we need help, they should? Anyway, if you need anything, talk to Joanne. That's really the one you should talk to because she'll get it done. Please join us immediately following the service for our Onik Shabbat, which is sponsored by Aaron and Dana Sugar in honor of Erev Sugar. Tonight we say so long to Erev, who is heading down south to begin his new life. It's going to be hard to picture this place without you. It seems like you're just here. Erev is just part of the scenery, and we will miss you, my friend, and we wish you safe travels. And thank you to Aaron and Dana for sponsoring the Onik. Shabbat Shalom, which is a Pesadiki Onik, I might add. Shabbat Shalom, happy Passover, and thank you for being part of our wonderful Shir Shalom family.
So I will say that the West New York Improv, they're doing a bang-up job. They're doing such a great job. They just did a show last week at Genesee County, or Genesee Country Museum or something like that. And they got booked again for July and August. They're just getting rebooked every place they're going. I think it's really going to be spectacular. I would love to see everybody there. I think we're just going to have a hoot. So please sign up to make it work really well, because they want a bigger crowd than a smaller crowd, because it's just much more effective if there's like more personalities in the room and everything. So let's populate this whole thing.
So as long as everybody's saying things,
Yes.
I wanted to steal a few moments of your time because y'all were silly enough to give me the microphone. Just a huge note of gratitude. I don't want to harp on anything, and I don't want to sound fishy. I've been holding on to those puns all evening. I really have. But I am just immensely grateful for you all to invite me into your midst this evening and to allow me to be here and speak and talk at you and break your service and probably mispronounce names that you all held with such grace. And I'm just immensely grateful to all of you. And I just truly wish you a beautiful Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much. And I believe we start to end.
Yes. This is the final hymn. We're doing great tonight.
A dear who at the very tail end of our prayer books.
666. Something sounds auspicious about that, right? Then we have Sean again on the organ. It's nice to be able to sing this song one last time as we really say goodbye to Passover very soon. 666, which it doesn't have it in Hebrew for some reason, but we're going to sing it anyway, and then we'll do the first verse of God of Might. Ah, dear who, if never told Imhera, Yamenu, Bekarov, El B'nai, B'nai V'tcha, Bekarov. Nice and loud, everyone, with God of Might. Here we go. God of might, God of right, thee we give all glory. Thine all praise in these days, as in ages hoary. When we hear, year by year, freedom's wondrous story. Well, we're going to say Motzi, but I think something happened to the challah. Did you sit on this, Rabbi?
It's a little flat.
Why did you say it tonight?
Why don't I? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
What can I say? It's just flour and water, Rabbi. I didn't write the rules. You guys did. Good evening, everyone. Let's all meet up in the social hall for our oneg.